Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Payje Davis. With an NCAA playoff implications on the line, the most heated rivalry in the NFL shaping up to face each other, the Cleveland Cavaliers winning 12 straight to start the season. We've got a lot to discuss. In the Zone starts now. I am joined by Dylan Shields and Zach Humphreys, where we begin the discussion in the college football world. This past week, we saw a number of upsets that saved some teams from playoff elimination, and for others, these might have knocked them out of the contention for the national championship. Of the upsets, we saw a top 4 team in the Miami Hurricanes fall to the almighty Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, and Ole Miss beating Georgia by 18, holding their offense to only 10 points. Zach, which upsets from across the nation were the most costly for the playoff implications?
One that seemed to really catch my eye in this case was Iowa State falling to the Kansas Jayhawks. I mean, Kansas, they had like one good year a few years ago. I think it was right around the COVID year. But then ever since, they've stuck to being that basketball school. And they really showed it off last night if we want to talk about college basketball. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about how a 7-1, number 17th ranked Iowa State went on the road to Kansas and allowed 42 points by the Kansas Jayhawks. I mean,
that's rough. That's rough.
Jalen Daniels was a freak of nature. Though he was throwing for 50%, but his throws were magnificent. But also the big thing is Iowa State just had to take care of the ball. They kept turning the ball over, and that alone led them to falling third in the Big 12. And now it's with how Colorado and BYU are playing, I don't see them getting back in the playoffs.
You mentioned Miami losing. You mentioned Georgia losing as well. Those are upsets. They're kind of teetering around the playoff position. But I think the game that kind of just eliminated a team is LSU getting absolutely crushed by Alabama. Jalen Milroe was like Kyler Murray and Lamar combined, just absolutely torching the LSU defense. And he ran for, 185 rush yards. And he just ran for 4 touchdowns.
More like just Lamar to me.
Maybe. But the LSU offense struggled. Their QB threw 2 key picks in the red zone. They're in 8th in the SEC now. And we know how stacked they are, especially with the new team. So I think Bama might have saved their season with that win. And I think LSU's kind of done.
And I also think, talking about saving a season, Ole Miss, after losing a few weeks ago, they had to win out. And then they go and welcome Georgia, and they end up holding them to 10 points alone.
In the swamp, too.
That was fantastic. I mean, Jackson Dart had a great day. And also, kind of like the Kansas game where they just should have held on to the ball a little better, Kansas also ran it down Iowa State's throat. I feel like that's important. Georgia, let alone, they fumbled it twice and they fumbled it 4 times, turned it over twice, but then also threw a pick, all of it happening in the second half. So that you're just going to fall apart anyway. So, I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster, if you ask me.
That's just rough for them, honestly. The latest college football rankings were released with some big moves worthy of discussion. With the Big Ten occupying 4 of the 5 spots in the rankings, this complicates things for teams like Georgia and SMU who are on the outside of the playoffs bracket looking in. Dylan, do you agree with these rankings?
I think for the most part I do. I want to give personal shout-outs to some undefeated teams here. How about Indiana? What a turnaround their season was. They were a terrible team last year, and they might have not played anyone you could consider legit yet, but they're 10-0 for a reason, and they play Ohio State next week. So that'll be their true test to see if they can at least compete. Maybe they don't have to win, but not get blown out by them. BYU, you mentioned them earlier, number 7, they are 9-0. Maybe another team where their conference is a little weak, but maybe they can do well come playoff time. And a team that people probably ain't going to expect me to mention, Army. 9-0, number 16. They're like the option team. They never throw the ball, but yet they are pretty dominant. And they play Notre Dame, who they've kind of gotten it together after, I believe it was the Northern Illinois upset.
It was.
Yeah, those undefeated teams, there's a lot of parity this year. Like, Oregon's the only big-time undefeated #1 team. Everybody else, the undefeated teams I mentioned, are kind of teetering in there. So it's going to be very unpredictable come playoff time. But in terms of the rankings, I don't think it's bad at all. I think it's pretty good rankings.
I think there were definitely some things that could have changed in the rankings. I mean, Indiana, I think, should be a top 4 team. I believe Penn State is just a little too high just because
I agree with that.
Their one test against Ohio State, they faltered offensively.
Of course
the
they
only
did.
touchdown they got was on the pick 6, right? And then, I mean, the whiteout, they dominated as usual, but it's Washington. Washington kind of fell off the wagon. Indiana's playing some really great football right now. I think they could easily go into the playoffs and beat teams like Alabama or possibly even like Texas as well. I think they're playing some really good football.
Oh, that's a hot take.
It is what it is. I think I also would like to give some effort to Colorado. I mean, people are going to hate them because they get a lot of praise on social media and they get a lot of attention. They deserve it now. They're playing some really good football. They're starting to climb that ranking, and I think they're the only competition between BYU and making that college football playoff.
I also agree. Penn State, it's rough for them. They shouldn't be that high, especially after their lose against Ohio. That was. That's all I gotta say.
Sorry, Penn State.
Yeah, sorry, Penn State. Despite the undefeated record at the midway point in the season, the Kansas City Chiefs struggled against the Denver Broncos at home. The entire season, the Chiefs have won by a thin margin with an average point differential of 6 points. After last week's overtime win against the Buccaneers, the Chiefs ended the game with a game-winning field goal block to beat Bo Nix, 16-14, with their eyes set on a three-peat. Zach, is there a level of concern with the Chiefs?
There is absolutely a level of concern, and I mean, I would like to preface that it is it's difficult to say when there is a level of concern when a team is undefeated midway through the season. Although you have to compare it to the past few seasons as well, where they've won the Super Bowl in back-to-back years, where their offense just does not look as good as it did during those 2 years, and also their defense was never good, and it still doesn't look to be one of the better teams. Of course, you've got Chris Jones, but other than that, that defense really doesn't have anything going for them. So it's and also I feel like you have to look at as well, not necessarily like the wins, but you have to look at their competition and who they played throughout. I mean, you look at teams like they barely beat the Falcons last minute due to a controversial no call. Right, and then you look towards the Ravens, where I believe the Ravens lost that game. The Chiefs didn't win it. That last drive, the Ravens messed up.
Toe.
It was the toe, and even the play before that. I mean, opportunities were missed. Actually, let me read off what I got here. So
he's got the notes, guys.
Yeah. This is my list of bailouts. Okay, ready? We're ready for this. Okay, so the Bengals, I would say that they was the controversial third down call that gave them another redo for a third down, which led to a flag later on. That was controversial as well. As well as they just got by the Chargers. They beat up a banged up Niners and Bucks. It's very difficult to be able to say that this team is confidently going to win a third straight Super Bowl.
I mean, Chiefs fans here are gonna love me for this, but I gotta disagree.
I think they got it in the bag.
I don't think there's that much concern.
Yeah.
I understand why, the way they've been playing, maybe they're giving my 2020 Steeler vibes in terms of 11-0. But as long as 15's on the field, as long as Andy Reid's still alive coaching, as long as 87, who's continued to improve the past few weeks, is still out there, I think they'll be good. I mean, the Bills, that's going to be their test to see if they can compete. But
I'd also like to point out, too, if later in the season they're going to play a healthy Houston team. Nico Collins coming back from injury.
Chiefs have a tough schedule in general, but their defense still is really good. They're overall the 5th best in the league, only averaging around 17 and a half points per game, which is the 6th best. And even Kareem Hunt, coming back from the dead just to his old team like he's 2017 all over again. The Chiefs make guys like him, like Juju, like these washed guys, they make them good. So I don't think there's that much reason to be concerned. It's just they find ways to win. And at the end of the day, they're the only undefeated team for a reason.
Exactly. And I think they got a three-peat in them. I would love to see it.
I hope not.
I think this is, as a girl, I was going to say as a girly, I think personally Taylor Swift is a good luck charm. Honestly, I think my girls are a good luck charm.
Moving on.
Yeah, let's move on to the next topic.
We are also looking forward to one of the best rivalries in the NFL, where the Steelers are hosting the 61st meeting with the Baltimore Ravens. So far this season, the Steelers have shocked the entire league by sitting atop the AFC North with a 7-2 record. Russell Wilson has yet to lose a game in the black and gold, including last week's comeback victory against the Washington Commanders. On the other side of the rivalry, the Baltimore Ravens sit half a game behind at the divisional standings after an electric Thursday night matchup against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. Dylan, who's coming out on top in the game?
Ooh, this could be fun. We joke all the time about like the Steelers and Ravens. Me and Zach go back and forth. But in all seriousness, these two games, especially this Sunday, are huge. They are big games. And the rivalry's never really lost its luster, but it's the first time in years where it's like they're both legit rather than just like the Ravens being the dominant team.
Yeah,
so this is going to be good. But I think you've been saying this to me a lot. There's a big elephant in the room, and it's that your defense is nowhere near last year's form. And I think that's the difference in this game. I think the Steelers' defense is much better, only averaging 16.2 points per game, second best in the league. Overall, they're the second best in the league. The Highsmith injury sucks that we lost him, but number 90 is still healthy, and he's going to be feasting on Lamar. He's one of the few guys that could keep up with Lamar and his rushing ability. Like, the offense still scares me, especially with keeping up with Henry. But our offense in general, with the struggling Ravens defense, the best they've looked in years, the best passing offense they've looked in years. Pickens looks rejuvenated. Mike Williams, welcome to Pittsburgh with the game-winning touchdown. I mean, I'll admit, like, we were kind of lucky to beat Washington, and it's going to be close with the Ravens game, but I mean, come on. Of course I'm going to pick my Steelers to beat the Ravens. Why wouldn't I? But it's going to be close.
You mentioned the Steelers' recipe for disaster, and I can sum it up in 5 words. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Okay? That duo alone, come on. The Steelers have never seen anything like that. We've had like a C-tier running back, and I'm sorry to call J.K. Dobbins that, but he was battling injury when he was in Baltimore. So we weren't really sure what we were getting, or it was Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, we know we're running it down your throat. J.K., we try to get him around the outside. Derrick can do it all. Derrick can do it all. T.J. Watt's head is going to be in a blender this entire game. He's going to have no clue what to do. He's going to bite on one, and guess what? Lamar is looking a lot better than the past 2 years. I mean, now he can throw the ball a lot more accurate. He's got his QB rating has gone up. The percentage of completion has gone up. His yards are fantastic. And this is just passing that we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen. We're forgetting about the running that makes him so good. All right, I heard this term the other day. This offense is like lightning in a bottle. I mean, the minute that bottle's open, you better hope that Russell Wilson is ready. And that offensive line, too. I mean, golly, what was I watching against the Commanders? This defensive front, there's a reason we're good against the run, because we get pressure. We box you in. If you think Russell Wilson's going anywhere, I'm calling it 4 sacks and an interception.
How that secondary look against Cincy, though.
Also, like, you guys cracked under pressure at last year's Super Bowl. I just want to point that out.
We didn't make the Super Bowl.
You made the Super Bowl, but you still lost.
Mentally, you think you were.
Mentally, you think you won, but you still lost. So.
Hey, we're not talking about last year. We're talking about this year. Okay, we're gonna focus on this week, where the Ravens are going to pull it out. It's in Pittsburgh, am I correct?
Okay. Acrisure Stadium.
They're going to end those terrible towels. The terrible towels are going to go home with tears of Steelers fans.
Whoa.
Ravens victory, 35-28.
Specific scores here.
You got it. What you got?
I'll say 27-20 us. Lamar's won
so
3 against us, by the way.
But okay, we have to move on.
I'd give it to you.
That is what it is.
We'll now send it over to Kevin Lynch for the latest in Marauder athletics. Kevin?
Thanks, Paige. The Marauder football team fell victim to another loss after the Bloomsburg Huskies' explosive third quarter, where they scored 21 unanswered points, resulting in a Millersville loss 35-27. The Marauders are hoping to end the season on a positive note as they travel to Edinburgh for the final game of the 2024-2025 season. The wrestling team continued their success in their clash at Cooper Park as they took on York College. Millersville started off hot, winning 5 of their first 6 bouts, which led to their 3rd straight success against York. This energy took them into the Mason duels, in which they won 2 of their 3 matchups on the road. They will be looking to continue their success into the weekend at the Shorty Hitchcock Classic at the Student Memorial Center. Men's soccer welcomed 13th ranked Bloomsburg this past weekend and held them scoreless. The Millersville defense was a force to be reckoned with, limiting the Huskies' offense, only having goalkeeper Jake Van Voorhees needing to save 5 shots the entire game. Ending the season with a big win, they faced off against the Westchester Golden Rams, where the game was tied 1-1 and needed penalty kicks to find a winner. Unfortunately, Westchester scored all 5 of their penalty kicks to move on to the next round of the playoffs, concluding the men's soccer season to a 9-6-3 overall record. Now we're going to send it back to Payje for an update on the best team in the NBA, not named the Boston Celtics. Payje?
Thanks, Kevin. Last week on In the Zone, we asked the question, how about them Cowboys? But this week, we're asking, how about them Cavaliers? The Cleveland Cavaliers have taken the Eastern Conference by storm by winning 12 straight to start the season with wins against the Lakers, Knicks, Warriors, and Magic. They have a favorable upcoming schedule leading to their matchup against the Celtics, with their next few games against the Sixers, Bulls, and Hornets. Zach, how far can the Cavaliers keep up this winning streak?
I'd say that the Cavaliers are looking in real good shape. I mean, when you have a backcourt like Mitchell and Garland that can go out there and get you 20, 25 points on any given night, and then you also combine it with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, who are so focused on that defensive aspect of the ball. I mean, I feel like their opportunities to continue this win streak, even past the Celtics, are so high. I mean, we don't even need to worry about teams like the Bulls beating them. I just focus on that game alone. The Celtics and the Cavs is going to be really good, and it's especially one thing that I also really liked is the Cavs are #1 in offensive efficiency. That I feel is one of the in a sport of basketball where any given night you could either be on or you could be off. There's really like a difficult in between. You could either never take the lid off the basket or it could be huge to you, right? And in a game like this, if you are remaining efficient throughout the remainder of the season, that's a tough team to beat.
Well, Cleveland's got a lot of depth. They got really good depth pieces. Obviously, Mitchell leads the show. I mean, their three-point shooting has been unbelievable against the Bulls. They were, not gonna lie, they could have lost that game, but at the end of the day, they came back in the fourth quarter. I think when you mentioned the easy schedule, they're playing the Sixers are a disaster. The Bulls, they already beat on the road, and the Hornets are not good. I think, yeah, we're heading into the inevitable matchup with the Celtics with them being undefeated. You mentioned the point efficiency specifically. They score 122.4 per game, which is amazing. They've scored 130 or more in 5 of those games.
Yeah.
And I believe they're one of only 5 teams in history to start their first 12 undefeated. I think the last time we saw it was the 16 Warriors. And, of course, people are going to be skeptical about the Cavs being like, have they played anybody so early in the season? Let's not overreact. But all the points you mentioned, I think, are completely fair. I mean, they've been slowly building up this team for years. And like I mentioned, they got good depth pieces. They got very good power forwards and centers. And their defense has been solid, too. So I think this team is definitely legit. And I think it's definitely sustainable for them to be undefeated, even past the Celtics game.
Yeah. I believe that this is such like a well-put-together team. I mean, if you think about it, like you said, Mitchell's the star. But everybody else fills their role. And I think
a lot
that
of
is
underrated pieces.
Exactly. And I feel like that alone was able to build around Mitchell, and they're due for greatness.
Changing our focus to the other side of the nation, the Western Conference witnessed the first matchup between the former Splash Brothers in the first round of the NBA in-season tournament, and both came to play. Klay Thompson scored 22 points by shooting 50% from outside the arc, and Steph Curry scored 37 points, including a game-sealing last-second dagger to win the game for the Warriors. The Warriors have started the season 9-2, tied for the top spot in the conference, whereas the Mavericks started the season 4-2, but have lost 4 of their last 5 games. Dylan, how can the Mavericks get to the column?
Well, we mentioned, to get back to the win column, I think it's the opposite of the Cavs of why they're losing. They have no depth. Kyrie and Luka can't do everything. And Klay Thompson finally stepped up last night with 22, and he did very well from the three-point line. But before last night, he was struggling. He doesn't really look like prime Klay anymore, which he's getting older. But you can't rely on those 3 to do everything for you. They need other pieces, and it's clear there's a lack of that. They also kind of lack the clutch gene, and their losing streak. Close games with the Nuggets and Suns that they just have not been able to put away. And I think part of that is they love to run an ISO offense because they have a bunch of guys who just love to have the ball a lot, like Luka and Kyrie. And it's worked in some ways, but in some ways it also hasn't. The bigger issue probably is their defense. It's very soft right now, especially in the perimeter. They're also leaving guys way too open from three. They let Steph Curry cook way too much because he was struggling until that fourth quarter last night. So, and we saw it as early as last year in the NBA Finals, which showed the Mavericks' lack of depth in terms of how they got crushed by the Celtics, who had all the depth in the world. So, yeah, they're going to have to – I mean, it's early in the season, but – they're going to have to turn around fast. They're going to have to – Clay's going to probably have to step up because you can't just have Luka and Kyrie go for 20 and 30 and expect to win all these games because it's shown that it's not enough.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, the depth is obviously a problem. And I was going to bring up as well how last year they struggled with the depth, but you mentioned it. I mean, like you said, that was the exact reason why they are still stuck in this, I guess, troubling time to figure out what they're doing. I mean, and also something else that I noticed as well is they turn the ball over a lot. They're one of the worst teams in the league in the turnover ratio. And I mean, it's terrible to be able to partner that up because they have a losing record, but they're positive in the point differential, which just goes to that's not normal, right? And then also, if you think about it as well, like other than I said turnovers. No, they foul people too much. The turnovers are good.
I have heard that.
Yeah, they're just too handsy. They keep fouling people. They had 23 personal fouls last night against the Warriors. Luckily, the Warriors are one of the worst free throw teams in the league. But when you begin to play, when you begin to play other teams, you're just basically giving up free points.
Yeah. I don't know, Mavs. I don't know if they're getting back to the finals again.
Seems rough for them just looking at their score.
That trade deadline is going to come in clutch later in the season to see if they even want to be able to have a push for the finals or the playoffs even.
Yeah, exactly.
Seems rough for them. That'll do it for this episode of In the Zone. From Zach Humphreys, Dylan Shields, Kevin Lynch, and the entire In the Zone crew, I'm your host, Payje Davis. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to tune in next time right here on In the Zone.